It happened on a Thursday night, October 17th, 2019. I remember the exact date because it was one of those days where everything felt slightly off from the minute I woke up. Not bad, just skewed. Like my brain knew something was coming and hadn't sent the memo to the rest of me yet. I was working the late shift as classroom IT support at Brookline Community College. My shift officially ran from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., but by 9:30 the place always felt abandoned. Most night classes ended early and the hallways would empty out, fast, leaving nothing but the hum of vending machines and the soft buzz from the flickering ceiling lights that badly needed replacing. We didn't get many high-priority calls at night, so the shift was mostly maintenance, software updates, hardware swaps, long overdue repairs that couldn't happen when the rooms were packed with students during the day. I didn't mind the dark, and honestly, walking through the building with only the emergency lights glowing had become weirdly calming. So I had a habit of not turning on classroom lights if I only needed a minute or two at a workstation. It saved time, and after a few months, you sort of memorized where everything was anyway. Around 10 p.m., as I was wrapping up a network audit, a ticket popped up on my phone. It wasn't urgent, but it was due tonight. Install authentication client on instructor PC, room L320. L320 didn't ring a bell. The L wing wasn't one I'd worked in much, but it was quiet, and I figured it'd be a quick in-and-out job, 5 minutes tops. The walk over there took me down a long hallway lined with trophy cases from the nursing and healthcare programs, photos of smiling classes, mannequins propped in CPR poses, old anatomical models with faded labels. The air was colder than usual. The building's HVAC always dipped after 9 for energy savings, and you could feel it settle in your bones. When I reached room L320, the door was already slightly open. Just an inch. Not enough to be suspicious, but enough to make me pause. The motion sensor lights in the hallway clicked off behind me, leaving only that sliver of darkness inside the classroom. I pushed the door open with my shoulder, not bothering to turn on the main lights. The room wasn't completely black. There was a faint bluish glow from a street lamp filtering through 2 tall windows on the far wall. I took a few steps inside, letting the door fall quietly shut behind me. Halfway across the room I froze, every hair on the back of my neck lifted, like static crawling straight out of my spine. My breath caught in my throat before I even understood why. It wasn't fear of the dark. It was familiarity. That deeply human, primal certainty that I wasn't alone, that I was being watched. No, worse, that I was surrounded. I didn't move, didn't swallow, didn't even blink. My eyes were still adjusting, and for a second the room felt like it was holding its breath with me. Then the shapes started to form. At first, it looked like the walls were wrong, as if the room was smaller than it should have been. The silhouettes were tall, rectangular, spaced evenly around the entire perimeter. Beds, hospital beds, dozens of them, pressed tightly against the walls, all angled slightly toward the center of the room, and in each one, a figure. Someone was sitting there, upright, shoulders slightly forward, heads tilted in my direction, watching me. My lungs snapped back online all at once, and I stumbled back a step. A whisper of air escaped me before I could stop it, just a tiny sound, but in the silence it felt deafening. My brain kicked into panic mode. Oh my God, what is this? Who are they? Why are they sitting up like that? Why are they looking at me? What the hell is... Profanities slipped out before I could stop myself. Not shouted, not whispered, just a raw, instinctive sound pulled straight from the middle of my chest. My hands were shaking. I felt a bead of cold sweat crawl behind my ear. I'm sorry. My voice cracked, the words tumbling out, stupid and reflexive, like I had walked in on something private. As if apologizing would make sense to the silhouettes staring me down. And then, finally, my vision caught up. They weren't people. They were mannequins, nursing dummies, dozens of them. Every one of them sitting upright in identical postures, their blank plastic eyes shining just enough in the dim light to look horribly real for those first seconds. My pulse thrashed in my ears. The embarrassment hit next, hot and sharp, washing over the fear like a delayed punchline. Of course this was a nursing classroom. Of course the beds were lined up like that. Of course the dummies were positioned for training. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and forced a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of my neck like an idiot. "You almost got me," I muttered to no one, stepping toward the instructor PC. The glow from the monitor did help, filling the room with a pale light. Enough that I could finally see all the mannequins clearly. The stiff limbs, the molded faces, the synthetic hair on a few of them. Their eyes all seemed to catch the glare from the monitor, making them sparkle faintly. I shook my head, sat down, and started the installation. 3 minutes passed, maybe 4. The tension faded, my breathing steadied. The hum of the computer was soothing, familiar. I was just about done when a soft clicking sound broke the silence. I paused. It came from behind me, near the beds. I turned slowly. The mannequins were exactly as they had been, sitting up, facing forward, unmoving. But something was off. One of them, the one closest to the instructor desk, seemed to be turned a few inches more than before. Not facing the center of the room, facing me, I stared at it. The room felt suddenly colder again. I tried to swallow, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. I hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't heard anyone enter. The door was still shut. Another click, this time from the opposite wall. And that was my cue to leave that room. It was probably my paranoia, but I thought when I first came in. All of them had been identical, rigid, perfectly aligned. Now, this one weren't. It happened on Tuesday, November 12th, 2013. One of those nights where the air is cold enough to sting, but not cold enough to snow. I had just finished a shift at the Old Lantern Pub, a small place tucked off County Road 6. I'd been working there for almost a year, and it was only 2 miles from my house. Usually, the walk home was peaceful, quiet, predictable. My shift ended around 11 p.m., but I stayed behind for a couple of drinks with my boss, Ron, and 2 of the servers. It was one of the rare nights where everything went right. Steady flow of customers, all generous, all happy. By the time I closed out my tip envelope, I had just under $400 in cash stuffed in my jacket pocket. More money than I ever walked home with. I remember stepping outside around 11:40. The second the door shut behind me, the silence hit. The kind that feels thick, like it soaks into your skin. Out in the boonies, without traffic, without nearby houses. Silence has weight. It was pitch black. The new moon was 2 days away, and clouds were rolling low, covering everything. The only streetlight between the pub and my house was a 1/4 mile down the road. A sad, flickering light perched on a leaning wooden pole that looked like it might give up at any moment. After that, it was just open country roads swallowed by darkness. I pulled my jacket tighter and started walking. About 2 or 3 minutes into the walk, I heard the soft crunch of tires behind me. Slow tires. I stepped off to the shoulder out of habit. A dark-colored sedan, maybe navy blue or black, rolled past me at barely 20 miles per hour. Too slow to be casual, too slow to be normal. I watched the taillights fade into the dark. Then, about a 1/4 mile ahead, right near that flickering streetlight, the car slowed and stopped. Just sat there. No brake lights blinking. No turn signals, nothing. I stopped walking. It felt like the air around me tightened. I waited. The car didn't move for maybe 2 full minutes. Then, finally, it crawled forward again and disappeared down the road to the right, where the houses start spreading miles apart. I exhaled and kept walking, but with that heavy awareness you get when your nerves don't reset all the way. 5 minutes later, I heard the engine again. Same car, this time coming toward me from the opposite direction. It passed me slowly. So slowly I caught a glimpse of the driver's silhouette through the window. Just a shape, no details, but I felt it. That sensation of someone looking directly at you. It continued a few hundred feet past me, then slowed and stopped again. My heart started pounding. In the next second, the reverse lights flicked on, but instead of backing up, the car did a full U-turn in the road, and then the headlights switched off, just clicked into darkness. The engine was still running, and it started rolling toward me. I can't explain. The exact moment fear turns into survival instinct. But when it happens, your brain goes silent and your body just takes over. I bolted off the road into the woods. Not far, just enough to get behind a mess of bushes and pine branches. I crouched low, pressing myself into the dirt and leaves. My breath sounded way too loud in my own ears, so I clamped my hand over my mouth. The car moved so slowly I couldn't track it. With the headlights off and the trees blocking the view, it blended into the darkness completely. I waited. 5 minutes. 7. 10. Nothing. No engine. No crunching gravel. No doors, just silence. I thought maybe I was imagining the danger. Maybe the driver lived nearby. Maybe they were lost. Maybe they weren't creeping on me. Then I heard it. A car door shutting, not in the distance. Close, too close. My whole chest tightened. My fingertips went numb. I pressed myself lower to the ground. I could feel my pulse beating in my throat, and every part of me screamed, "Don't move." Then, another car door, a second one. I didn't hear voices, no footsteps, just the two shuts of doors like whoever was out there was trying not to be heard. For the next stretch of time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20, I genuinely don't know. I sat there imagining a figure moving between the trees, someone stepping quietly, listening for me. I kept feeling like eyes were watching from behind, like someone could be inches away and I wouldn't hear them until a hand touched my shoulder. Eventually, there was another door slam, then another. Then the engine started, and finally, I heard the tires roll over gravel and fade away in the direction of the main road. I stayed hidden for several minutes after the sound disappeared completely. When I finally crawled out of the bushes, my legs were shaking so badly I had to hold onto a tree to stand. I made my way back onto the road, checked in both directions twice, and sprinted. Full-out sprint. The whole quarter-mile back to the pub. I burst through the door, breathless and shaking. Ron took one look at me and demanded to know what happened. When I told him, his expression changed instantly. No skepticism, no brushing it off. Just immediate seriousness. He didn't hesitate. He said, "You're not walking home at night again. Ever. Not alone." The kitchen staff heard the story within minutes, and everyone agreed. They all knew this stretch of road. They all knew how dark it got, how isolated it was. I never found out who was in that car, or what they wanted. But the next night, on my way to work, I passed that same stretch of road, and there were fresh tire tracks in the dirt leading straight into the woods, right toward the spot where I'd been hiding. It happened on a Sunday night in 2020. I was about halfway through a 12-hour shift at Ridgeway Behavioral Health, a psychiatric facility tucked on the outskirts of town where the woods grow thick, and the security lights don't always hit the tree line the way you expect them to. I had been working the night shift there for almost 3 years, long enough to be desensitized to the strange things people whisper at 3 a.m., but not long enough to be numb. You never really get used to it, only familiar. Nights in a psych facility have a very specific atmosphere. The building feels hollow, every sound seems louder, every shadow darker. You hear distant humming from the HVAC system, pages turning at the nurse's station, the occasional muffled cry echoing down hallway B. It's a quiet that never stays comfortable for long. It was around 2:17 a.m. when the incident happened. I remember the exact time because I had just written it in my progress notes. I was working with another nurse that night, Marissa, who was newer, maybe 6 months in. She still got that wide-eyed look whenever a patient said something unsettling. I didn't blame her. Nights bring out the worst of people's fears, and the building itself doesn't help. We had a patient that shift named Daniel Avery, mid-30s, polite when lucid, volatile when he wasn't. He'd been admitted 2 days earlier after a severe psychotic break, seeing and hearing things, primarily visual hallucinations. His baseline was unstable, but he was manageable. At around 2:20, he came shuffling out of his room wearing that standard blue hospital gown and socks, his eyes wide, hands trembling. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't panicking. He just looked hollow, almost fragile. He leaned across the nurse's station counter and whispered, "There's someone outside my window, staring at me." Now this wasn't new for him. He'd been reporting hallucinations since intake. Shadow figures, faces in corners, reflections that spoke to him. Usually, reassurance and grounding techniques helped. So Marissa gently asked, "Daniel, did it look like the same person you've been seeing?" He didn't answer. He just shook his head slowly, his eyes filling with tears. "No, this one's real." He was breathing on the glass. It's moments like that, when you can feel the sincerity behind the fear, that make you pause. Even when you know, statistically, the hallucination is the most likely explanation. But protocol is protocol. When a patient is distressed, you check the environment. You don't shrug it off. I told Marissa, "Let's go take a look. He'll feel better if we show him it's empty." Room 112 was down a short hallway on the east side of the wing. It's the only room in that hall that faces the back tree line instead of the parking lot. The curtains in those rooms are removable, thick gray fabric panels meant for easy cleaning. When we got to the doorway, Daniel stood behind us, wringing his hands and rocking his weight from heel to toe. He whispered, "He's still there." I assumed he meant the hallucination was still present in his mind. I didn't think twice. I walked in. The curtain was fully shut. I looked back at Daniel and nodded. "This window?" He nodded, lips pressed together, terrified. I gripped the curtain edge, half expecting to see nothing but blackness outside. But the moment the fabric slid even an inch to the left, my heart stopped. There was a face staring back at us, pressed against the glass, wide-eyed, motionless, breathing visible in faint, foggy pulses against the window pane. For half a second, my brain tried to justify it. Reflection, misinterpretation, sleep deprivation. But no, the man's eyes tracked my movement. He wasn't an illusion. He wasn't a reflection. He was there. Outside. Less than 2 feet from where I stood. The instant he realized we saw him, he jerked back, violently, and sprinted into the woods. Just a blur of movement swallowed by complete darkness. Marissa screamed. I stumbled back so hard I hit the bed frame. Daniel dropped to the floor, sobbing. I told you he was real." My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled the phone twice before calling security. They swept the grounds. Then the police came, lights cutting through the woods like weak blades. Nothing. No footprints they could follow. No broken branches. No sign of struggle. Just an empty yard and a wall of trees capable of hiding anything or anyone. The official report logged it as unknown trespasser. Case still open. No suspect identified. For weeks after, every time I passed that room, I felt a tightness in my ribs, like something had permanently shifted in the atmosphere. Like the woods outside were holding their breath, we moved Daniel to a room facing the parking lot. But 2 nights later, just before dawn, he woke up screaming. Again, this time he didn't claim to see anyone. He just kept pointing at the window and saying, "He remembers me. He knows which room I'm in." And when security checked the exterior glass, there were smudges, fresh smudges, in the shape of 2 hands, pressed against the outside.